Recorded Books presents an unabridged recording of Hollywood, a Third Memoir by Larry McMurtry, narrated by Henry Strozier and directed by Stephen Bartolome.
Chapter 1. Hollywood, as opposed to movies, its principal product, entered my life almost simultaneously with my son, James McMurtry, who arrived in March 1962, at which time I was teaching world literature, all of it, from the Ramayana to Dylan Thomas, at Texas Christian University in Fort Worth, Texas. To the farm and oil patch kids I was teaching, literature, or at least my mandated selection of it, held little appeal. In desperation, I began to challenge these reluctant students to ping-pong matches, a game at which I was then quite good. If a student won, he or she got an A. If they lost, they got a C. That may seem a little unorthodox, but then 5 classes is a lot of classes. Between matches, I was able to make friends with 2 writers, John Graves and Dave Hickey, both still alive and both still friends. Then one day, a man from Paramount Studios called, taking me by surprise. He turned out to be a location scout. That night he took me to dinner at what was probably the best restaurant in Fort Worth. Though by this time I had lived in both Houston and San Francisco, I knew nothing of fine dining. The man wore a pinstriped suit, which bespoke a standard of eloquence far beyond my own. Though the suit was probably just normal Brooks Brothers, I remember it to this day. And I also remember the news he brought me, which was that Paramount had just bought the film rights to my slight first novel, Horseman Pass By, and planned to film it in the panhandle of Texas, starting almost immediately, with Paul Newman to star. The sum they paid me, $10,000, meant to me farewell forever to the Ramayana and to table tennis as a grading system as well. The nice man wondered if I had any relatives in the Panhandle, folks who might help them with the locations. In fact, the Panhandle was then chock full of McMurtrys, and I sent the gentleman to the most able of the bunch, my cousin Alfred McMurtry, then living in Clarendon. Paramount promptly rented not only a lot of Alfred's land, but also his cattle herd and a good number of his cowboys. Thanks to all these rentals, Alfred McMurtry made a lot of money out of what became a movie called HUD. But I didn't begrudge him his good fortune, since he did have to put up for a while with the considerable aggravation of a movie production, whereas I did not. I was safe in Fort Worth, with a living and lively child. I also had to finish my semester at TCU, which I had wrongly supposed would be my farewell to teaching school. In a little more than a year, I was a lecturer at Rice, where I taught for almost 9 years. The movie-making in the Panhandle began about the time I finished with TCU. Eventually, I was asked to visit the set. The invitation, when it came, was issued without enthusiasm. It was as if the director, Martin Ritt, and the screenwriters, Harriet Frank and Irving Ravitch, had jointly decided to do the right thing, which in their world meant inviting the author to the set. Though, in fact, the author of the film they were filming was more or less the last person they wanted to see. Novelists being, after all, famously difficult about movies made from their work. They were apt to detect bruises on their text, where none were intended by the filmmakers. In my case, Martin Ritt and the Ravitches need not have worried. I was there only for an afternoon and spoke only a few words, and would hardly have been inclined to protest even if I had known what was going on, which of course I didn't. These were the people who had freed me from the Ramayana, which counted for much more than any blemishes in the film. I spent most of that afternoon parked in a line of cars on a panhandle dirt road, waiting for a man with a walkie-talkie to let us approach the set. I saw Paul Newman at a distance, but didn't actually meet him until